Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. One of the things that we all have been doing in the last couple of months is spending a heck of a lot of time in our homes. And so we have realized maybe things about our homes that are beneficial for us, some ways where our homes are not really built or designed the way we want to live our lives. Now that we're spending a lot of time in there, it's become a little bit more apparent. As an interior designer, I will tell you that there's a lot of stuff like that that's flying around as far as feedback from people. Everything from the homes are not really conducive for aging in place for the actual homeowner, or if they're taking care of an elderly parent, which they brought into their home at this point so that the families can be united, at least during this time of crisis, under one roof. I'm experiencing that to a slight degree with my own parents, although when we built their house, we put in a lot of things in there that basically make what's going on right now with them getting older a lot easier. And so I highly recommend that to people. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, please reach out to me, because it is a very difficult and hard thing to go through. And so every little thing that you can pre-plan for is helpful, and a lot of people do that pre-planning in financial means and maybe investments and sort of estates and kind of planning, but they don't necessarily do it in their physical environment planning, and the primary asset being that person's home. Anyway, the other things that are happening is real estate as a market started off very hot. It's been hot for a long time, residential and commercial. Commercial has been waning. And then we got hit with this. So I wanted to bring on somebody that I really respect. Her knowledge in the real estate industry, especially in Orange County, is by far impressive as far as I'm concerned, very impressive. And she is very much a data person, a numbers person. She calls it like it is. She also happens to be a good friend of mine, Wendy Hooper-Ross from Veracity Real Estate. And I have Wendy in the waiting room, so I want to bring her on, and we want to talk about the conditions of the market today. That's her company right there, realveracity.com, if you're interested to check it out. She's got some very informative videos on there as well. So I'm going to bring Wendy on, and we're going to talk real estate today. Okay, so let me see if I can get her. She is always on the spot here. Hold on, let's see. There's Wendy. Hello, Wendy.
Hey, Rod.
So I was saying before I brought you on is a couple of things. First of all, I said, as far as I'm concerned, you are amazing and impressive in your field of expertise. You are very much a data and numbers person. You analyze it like I have seen very few people do. And you definitely know your market. And real estate in general, on the residential side, commercial has been kind of a really kind of bizarre, weird kind of thing the last few years, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever in the course of living in South Orange County, I don't know, off and on, mostly since like 87, I have never seen the number of empty real estate, commercial real estates on Pacific Coast Highway out of all places that I have seen in this last year. I mean, you could count a dozen more between San Clemente and Newport Beach, which is unheard of. It was absolutely unheard of. So that's commercial real estate. Residential real estate has been doing its own thing, and I want to get to that in a minute. But I said that itself has also gone through some impact in the last couple of months that we were doing, right? I mean, whether it's the way you conduct your business, whether the industry itself, expectations, financial pressures that people have. But the other thing I also mentioned is, just from my perspective on the design side, is I've been getting a lot of feedback from people now that they are spending a lot of time at home.
Yeah.
They are able to kind of unavoidably evaluate whether their home is meeting their expectations. And, whereas we couldn't maybe get people to consider something like aging in place as a form of, asset improvement or enhancement earlier, now if somebody's actually, has a parent or somebody, it's not themselves, but having somebody under that roof for the last couple of months where they're, making sure that the family is united under one roof.
Right.
It becomes very apparent that, maybe your kitchen and your bathrooms are not really conducive for that multi-generational universal applicability, right?
All of a sudden, when you're spending a lot more time there, you see these things.
Right. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, but first and foremost, I want to start with, you tell people about yourself. I flashed your your logo there for a minute, so I'll do it
My
again.
very pretty logo. Thank
Your
you.
very pretty logo. And I said, people should definitely go to the website and check it out. There's a lot of good, useful videos in there, and you are very much a lot of data relevant to the industry. Let's give people a little bit of background, how long you've been in the industry, how long you've been doing this, and then what are you seeing? From my side of things, the economy, or let's just say the economic activity, let's just not
Mm,
say the economy, the economic
mm.
activity at the beginning of this year was out of control. I mean,
Oh,
compared
yeah.
to last year, this first quarter of 2020 was just like, we're going, oh my God, we finally got out of the doldrums of kind of like wasn't sure. And here we are kicking butt in January. And then here comes March and boom. I mean,
Full stop.
unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think anybody anticipated that. It was
Yeah, the
almost
year
like,
was like being shot out of a cannon, and then the cannonball fell to the ground
boom,
and didn't even roll. Just
right.
sat there.
No, it just plopped, said
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So let's start with how long you've been doing this.
Oh, geez. Like right out of the gate, show my age. So, as you know, I'm
Well,
from Northern
you can
California.
provide the measurement in any form you want. You want to do it in, like I've been doing it for a decade, an era, 20 years, whatever it is.
Oh,
It
Lord.
doesn't help. We all have to
It
admit.
doesn't matter. It is what it is. I started in the mid 1980s in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
So, and that was great because that was pre-technology. So in retrospect, as much as it was kind of a pain in the butt, because when we wanted to get something signed, we had to take a piece of paper and drive it across town and get it signed by someone and drive it back. It was a wonderful foundational experience for me to see a market grow and evolve while I'm learning the ropes. I worked both in real estate as a residential assistant and also in escrow and title. So I kind of saw both sides of the transaction, and that evolved into my being recruited to work for a private mortgage bank, which was fantastic. Again, hugely educational, seeing how mortgages are pulled together, sold into the secondary in New York,
Right.
until the tech crash. There was the first tech crash was in October 87, and that
Yep.
was really an education. So I'm aging myself, but I just want to give some
No,
background.
because you know what, Wendy, it's important to talk about those crashes too, or those turns, because a joint friend of ours, Lee Goldberg,
Right,
he and I actually talk about the fact that part of what's going on right now is there's a lot of people that have been maybe in business for 10 years.
right,
That puts them into what 2000 and 2010, let's say.
right,
Okay, so
right,
that's 2 years after the 2008 mess. So if
right.
they've been in business for 10 years, let's say they're 30 right now. So that means that they started at 20, which is a little highly unlikely. They may have been a little bit later, right? They
Yeah,
haven't really seen
right.
a reversal, a downturn, a slowdown.
Mhm.
Versus somebody who's maybe seen like the 87, the 91, 90,
Right,
91, right?
right.
Real estate
Oh
meltdown.
eight, oh nine after that.
Right.
Right,
Right.
right,
And so there is something to be said about that. It's still unnerving. It's still panicking. But if you've been through it,
right.
there's a certain sense of we've survived and weathered through that. We will find another way to do it again.
And beyond just that sort of emotional context, it also gives us some background where we can say,
Sure.
okay, back in that situation, this is what was happening in the market climate, and this is what was happening with technology.
So
Because
this is you going into the data thing that I was talking about. This is you like looking at it, right? So yes, you're absolutely right.
yeah,
So what happened? So 87, and that market was hot. I mean, when it was going, it was
it was
gangbusters.
hot. I mean, there was a lot going on in terms of artificial inflation of wealth from
Sure.
the new technology market, and then it just blended with an S&L crash, and it was just full tilt reset.
Right.
And what I've learned since then from people who are smarter than me who work in technology is that institutional lenders and the government, anyone who measures these metrics, they're now using technology that bakes in anticipation of what's going to happen as these trends move. So
Yeah.
technology has actually somewhat lessened the impact of these
Sure.
huge market transitions because there's an anticipatory aspect to it now that didn't exist then.
Well, it's like they talk about the matrix, as far as matrices. They talk about algorithms. At the end of the day, I don't, like I said, with all the algorithms on the planet, with all the matrices in play, I don't think anybody in January realized what was going to happen in March. There's always a variable. There's always an
Right?
unknown. But to your point, yeah, yes, it's actually almost like you shake your head that, you know, we live in this world where we feel like the technology and everything else around us gives us a sense of control
Right.
and you know, controlling outcome. And then we're hit with something like this that reminds us that, you know, that's a false premise, that control is a false premise. At the end of the day, something
Yeah.
can still come in and
Right.
knock you for a curve.
Oh, and
But
it's killing my clients because they're really accustomed to calling me saying, okay, what's going to happen next? And
mhm,
usually with my hubris, I say something like, well, they're going to write this offer and they're going to ask for that. And we're going to counter with that. And this is what's likely going to happen.
right,
And you can anticipate based on decades of going through transactions what might happen. And
right.
today I have to say, you know, I don't know. This is my first pandemic. I got nothing. What do you think is going to
Well,
happen?
that was one thing you said to me yesterday, and I thought it was
Yeah.
really funny. Like everybody was basically going, "Oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen." I'm like, "How do you know? This is your first pandemic. Have you been through a pandemic before? Were you around during the Spanish flu? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think you
Yeah.
were around during the Spanish flu."
Right.
So, but
There
with
are
that,
certain things that we can look at though, and there are
right,
certain data points I can still look at. There's still this many human beings living in Orange County. There's still this many living units to put them into.
right.
So what's going to happen with that?
That demand and supply is still demand and supply. I mean, people forget like 1991 that there was a big issue of saturation,
Right.
you know, and so that
Right.
was a big part of it. And I think the industry, both on the developer side and on the real estate, you know, brokerage side, learned that in '91, and I don't think
Right.
I have not seen them make that mistake again. So, you know, now, and sometimes actually now we're actually almost the reverse side, like we don't have enough inventory, right? And
Well,
so,
we have a situation where we're almost completely built out in Orange County. The
right.
density here is pretty great. And frankly, the cost to build is exponentially higher than it was 20, 30 years ago.
You know, that being said, though, Wendy, it still costs $1 million to build a hotel room, one hotel room in San Francisco. So, you know, when we talk about things, there's also a relevancy. Yes,
Right.
we also have still a mindset, right or wrong, whichever side of the equation you may fall on. I don't really want to go there, but not just you, but anybody that's listening to
Yeah.
this. But you know, there's still a sense that Orange County is a single family home, non-high density. You know, you got a little bit of piece of land, and
Right.
in some areas you're seeing that change.
Mhm.
Irvine is a perfect example of that
Right.
with all the high density multi units that are on the freeway.
Mhm.
But you're also seeing a lot of people push back on that. So we're still in that flux situation. To your point, we're built out. The only way to really increase available supply is to actually go to a higher density,
Right.
spot zoning versus master planning, you know. But the supply and demand is still supply and demand. The you know, the average income per household is still what it is. I'm sure we took a hit this time around, but
Sure.
you know, economic indicators. And I had a gentleman by the name of Logan Mohtashami, who's an economist on here, and he said that basically, you know, the basics of the economy were strong. Were they inflated? Sure. You made mention of the last time in '87 where things were inflated, and you know, there was a little bit of hubris when it came to like sort of financial wealth and status. And I think every down cycle that is even this one right now that we're going through has a little bit layer of that anyway. But he said that, you know, the basics of the economy were solid, and so whether we they stay that way or not, with
Mhm.
what's going on for however long it may go, that will also have an effect. What have you seen in the real estate business in the course of this pandemic? I know it's your first pandemic, but you know, go ahead.
But I'm acutely aware of what I'm seeing.
Right.
There's a couple things that really surprised me. I thought that the state of California, because that's who governs my industry, it's the state. I thought that they were really going to clamp down on my real estate activities and prevent me and other professionals like me from going out and having physical contact with other people, and they didn't. They did the reverse, and they got very proactive pretty early on, developing disclosures and things for everyone to sign, saying, yes, you know, we'll observe social distancing, we won't have
Right.
too many people on a property, et cetera, et cetera. And they developed these disclosures that I thought would scare the bejesus out of people, because basically you have to sign a document that says, yep, I know I could get sick, I know I could die, I know that after I see this house that I'm walking into,
Right.
I have to tell that broker if I later become diagnosed with COVID, there's a reach back on it. This is an onerous document. Everyone's signing it and moving ahead, which kind of blew my mind. So,
Well, you know, and it's interesting. That's interesting because I don't think you can separate, especially Southern California, but I think the whole state really. I don't
mhm,
think you can separate the economic engine at some basic level throughout the course of the state's history. from real estate development, from real estate, from construction, right?
Right.
So it actually makes perfect sense when you look at it through that filter that they would basically almost come out and say, your business, my business, that has to do with built construction, built environments is actually essential services.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
I mean, the joke for me was when I wasn't just considered essential services from the construction side, but I was also actually considered essential services from the podcasting side. That one blew my mind. Right. I mean, it's like I went over. I remember I'm going over to my mother and say, "See, I told you all this time that I was essential. And here it is. The state of California says that I'm essential on 2 counts."
Isn't redemption great?
It is. It is absolutely. She didn't. She still acted the same way she's acted for the last 50 years. She didn't give me much, consideration. But I love her to death. She's great. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. That what would scare most people. Like now, all of a sudden, I got to basically have the disclaimer clause and the paperwork, and God knows the industry doesn't have a lack of paperwork in it to begin with.
Sure.
Right.
And we're masking up and gloves and foot coverings and disinfectant and all of that. And it's been really wonderful to see how people have been embracing it and they've been positive about it. It's been really unifying. So what I thought was going to be this incredible acrimony where buyers and sellers are going to get further divided and more distrustful, it's done the opposite, and it's really brought them together, and it's made transacting far more pleasant.
Oh, so okay. You know what's interesting about that is, for me, I think there's a lesson to be learned there for everybody right now talking about reopening. I'm in the process of writing something relevant to this hospitality industry, where we're so adamant about trying to get people to come out and basically participate in activities, whatever it is, right? In a public setting, by actually either trying to scare them out of it because you're a scaredy cat, come out, you should come out, there's nothing to be afraid of. Come in, the water's fine. Trust me, forget about the fin that's in the water. But the other side of it is that it seems like everybody just wants to talk about cleanliness and cleaning and cleanliness and cleaning. And that's a double-edged sword, because if you're telling me all of a sudden you're taking an interest in cleaning, my first question to you is, what were you doing before?
Right.
But what you're discussing, what you're mentioning is actually a commonality there. It's like it's the buyers and the sellers and the brokers and the industry are kind of agreeing to come together and support a particular way of existing in the new normal. And regardless of what, it makes it possible, so everybody's embracing it. There's a lesson to be learned there, I think, by a lot of people.
Yeah, it's bringing out the humanity in everyone, and I'm so delighted. Like before, very often, if I went to a property to open it up for another broker so they could bring their client in, there was this stiffness and there was no communication. They were afraid to let me know anything about what might be going on with their client, like a game of poker. And today it's like, oh gosh, I need another mask. I'm like, hang on, let me go to my car, I've got some extra. And there's this relationship. There's an openness that was missing before. It's really nice.
Right. It was very transactional before, and now it's more relational, which you and I we've had a conversation about this. That's really the only way to sustain a business. So what has the reaction been? Let's switch it from a little bit of a different perspective. What's the reaction been from what you have seen from the buyers or the sellers? Like, obviously, has the motivation from the sellers changed? Is it now maybe a little bit more of a priority?
I would have to say it's a little all over the board there, Rod.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't had enough transactions since mid-March to have enough data to really, here I go again, to establish a firm trend. I have seen sellers take the position of 75%, I would say 3 out of 4 are saying, I was going to sell anyway. I'm selling, I'm moving forward. I don't know what the market is going to bring, but this is my life plan. My plans haven't changed. Let's just do it. And there was one notable seller who said, holy heck, we better get this sucker sold because we think the sky is falling. And I'm like, all right, well, I disagree with you, but let's get her sold because that's really how you feel.
Well, on that particular transaction, did you end up selling it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And how did it fare in terms of what you thought it would get, what they did get?
What's interesting with that one is that one took the biggest price cut of all of them. It's currently in escrow. It's scheduled to close in about 10 days. And they made a huge price concession on it that I didn't think they would have to make. But it was their choice. And I think it's because they believe it's only going to get worse. So in the end, it's their decision to make.
Yeah, and you just have to facilitate the transaction.
It's my job to give them my best advice, and the decision is ultimately their own. What's interesting to me is another property, a much older property in Laguna Niguel. We had planned to bring it onto the market in 2018, and life happens, and we just kept kicking the can down the road. So, of course, it came in the market in February. Perfect timing, right? This grand house, one of the most expensive homes in Laguna Niguel. We hit the market in February, then COVID hits, and we think, ugh, what's going to happen? And it's in escrow. It's scheduled to close first week of June, and we're going to set a record for the highest price per square foot ever paid in the history of that neighborhood. So,
so the motivation for the seller may have not changed dramatically across the board. You might have some odd cases where people are sort of like worried. They're thinking, right? The other thing I was kind of trying to basically try to understand is, with people staying in their homes longer, right? It's almost like that seasonal thing that happens with people moving. Like you'll see more transactions maybe, or more sales, or more people moving during the summer because before school year starts, and there's certain trends of that nature. And I would have thought that with this, people would basically say, no, I'm taking it off the market. I'm basically staying in this home. We don't know what's happening. 2 months, 6 months, who knows when we'll be furloughed, basically.
Some have, because just as we have seen the demand diminish by 30-40%, depending upon the market segment, the supply has also diminished.
Okay.
So it is commensurate. My personal clients, the people that I had been talking to, didn't change their plans to sell because these were plans that were already in motion.
Got it.
But we're only in May.
Right.
So, we're the window, that the horizon, if you will, of when someone decides that they may or may want to sell and they actually pull the trigger. Now is a better time for me to start determining for you whether or not these people are forestalling decisions because of the current environment.
Well, and we should see what happens, because again, that whole thing about, kids and school and, people maybe going, colleges are basically giving extensions to people and postponements and stuff so that they can still maintain their acceptances. So there's going to be this is going to play itself out over the summer. It's going to play itself out probably through until I'm predicting until next spring.
I think so, but in terms of my industry in real estate, I think by August, September, we'll really have an idea of what's going to happen.
Yeah, you will, again, because I think that traditional cycle will still play a part in this, so it'll give you a clear idea. Okay, so let's talk about if people's demands have changed. Like what we touched on earlier, like people getting a sense of what they may be looking for in a house now, whereas they may have not realized they needed that prior to being sequestered for 60 days, under one roof. Have you seen any of that?
Absolutely. In fact, I've had a couple of buyers refer to me within the last 14 days who have been really dissatisfied with a purchase that they made within the last 12, 15 months. Both of these homeowners bought homes really recently, and now that they're in it, and now that they're really in it, as we all are, sheltering in place, they're realizing either A, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or B, what I needed wasn't what I thought I needed. And so we're back on the market, really shifting their paradigm and adjusting their search.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think that's where I'm looking at people and behavior change, because I was talking to a gentleman on another show that I do called Design Sense, and we were talking to the guy who's the general manager for California Closets. And he was sharing the fact that they never stopped either. Like they continued all the way through this. And yes, sure, their volume took a hit. People are a little bit more hesitant maybe to spend large amounts of money. But again, It depends on what economic category you're in. Because you may look at it at that same situation and go, oh, wait a minute, there may be an opportunity here for me to secure better talent that was basically sparse and scarce before this to do stuff. I could prepare things now, because if this thing prolongs itself, I have the means. I might as well have a better situation in a couple of months. Anyway, and the complexity of that is that now, like you're going into people's homes, so you have to basically that assurance and, from a construction perspective. But what he was saying is he genuinely has seen a shift in some of the areas of focus. He said that home offices are a lot more a priority now than it was before. That's okay. There's Harley.
It's my dog.
I tell people this is how the sausage is made. This is
I'm
what
just going to mute myself.
So So you can hear me though, right? You can still hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, she can hear me. All right. So he was saying that home offices are becoming more of a priority for people, and that the home offices now are not just sort of an afterthought nicety, kind of like, makeshift man cave kind of whatever. They are now multi-person offices. They have to provide space for, both maybe homeowners to have a space that they can work in. It has to be functional. It has to have sort of support things that are not. Can you hear me? Go ahead. Is he still barking? He's still barking. Okay. It's okay. That's all right. Wendy will be back joining us here in a minute. Anyway, people have heard me say this on the other show, so I'm just going to be very short. So home offices was a major thing that they're seeing a change in demand for. Um, Media centers in the home have becoming a lot more important as well, because they're acting in everything as in a virtual classroom for the kids. They're a gathering space for the whole family now, not just basically where you send your kids off to get them out of your hair. And then the big one was that pantries in kitchens now
Yes.
need to be larger, and people are demanding it. And my first immediate reaction to that was, wait, did they finally realize that they've been shopping at Costco for the last 10 years and they need more space? And it can't be all in the garage? Because I've been preaching that for the last almost a decade. Like Costco missed a golden opportunity in not selling home plans or kitchen remodels, because they perfectly had a captive audience. Everybody who bought the volume that they bought, where the heck are they going to put it? Like, I know from
Right.
personal experience, condos, apartments, I'm buying at Costco. I need to have 3 other people I'm sharing this purchase with, because I don't have space to store it.
Right.
And so he was saying, Mike Cassidy's the gentleman's name. He was saying that pantries. And now when I said that to him, I said, well, he said, not really so much. He said the reason was not so much the hoarding or the need to stock up, but it was about the fact that now the kitchens were being used more. And so people are cooking together. People
Right.
are cooking more in the house. So they
Right.
need to have more compartmentalization. Some people are maybe also doing sort of a behavior pattern that goes back all the way to the time of the Great Depression. They're preserving,
Mhm.
they're canning, they're pickling stuff. And so
Sure.
an organized pantry where you can put everything, almost like grandma's old, pantry with the chicken wire on the front of it, and for aeration.
Right. Right. Right.
He's saying that is basically more also in demand. So it's interesting how, if you take that and you extrapolate it, for me, that means that people are likely in the future to
Mhm.
probably entertain more in their homes.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it. And to augment that a little bit, they're also looking to grow their own food at homes, because these people who are now more and more passionate, they've become interested out of necessity in
Right.
cooking. They're finding that they like it. And
Mhm.
now they're thinking, well, wait, I can grow my own basil. I can grow my own tomatoes. And that way I'll really know it's organic. I can grow my own spinach, whatever, whatever. So yeah,
Right.
that's part of what we're seeing as well.
Well, and if you take it again to the home office situation, I mean, you may be actually in a company situation where you have the option or you have the negotiation power to basically say, no, I'm not going to go work 5 days a week out of an office in a cubicle,
Right.
or an open floor plan or whatever. I'm actually going to want to be able to have the flexibility to work 3 days out of 5 in the home. It gives
Right.
me a little bit more a sense of, quality of life with my family. It allows me to maybe, I'm still on the clock. I'm still at the office, which that means then the office itself needs to be somewhat tied in and representative of the quality of the company you work for. So this thing just starts to cascade
Right.
to a lot of things. And so what does that box, if you will,
Mhm.
look like that people are looking for, versus I'm just walking in and I'm looking for a bathroom, or it used to
Right.
be, I want another second guest bedroom downstairs, or something I could convert to that. Or does the powder downstairs is it big enough where I can gain some space and put in a shower, so that, those were things that people were
Mhm.
starting to ask for. But now on top of that, at least those 3 areas we talked about are critical.
Well, and it's interesting because I had an appointment I don't know, recently with a potential seller. And I was sharing quite candidly that a few years ago, your home and the way it is situated, it's a beautiful home, but it's a squarish footprint in the
Hmm.
middle of a squarish lot.
Hmm.
So they've got yard
all the
equally
way around.
all around the house. They don't have a massive front yard or a massive backyard. They've got all these little yard spaces. And historically, that would not have been desirable at all. People want the big, expansive backyard and the pool and what have you.
Right.
But now that everybody is home, I said, we can really market the heck out of this. We can have the garden on the side.
Yeah, you got zones for people to have their own sense of space as well as gathering. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not stepping on each other.
No, it's true. And you can have like the area maybe off the kitchen. Now you've got a couple of elevated planter boxes, and now you got a little more space for a garden, the back area, the side area. Yeah, you're right. And that is interesting that people are already looking for that. I mean, it's amazing that it took all of 6. This is the other layer to this whole pandemic that's really fascinating to me, is just how quick, really. And in big part because of the technology, it's made it possible. Like, look at what we're doing right now, right? But how quick people actually responded. And when you compare that to what the stagnant, sluggish movement that usually people follow, whatever the motivation has been, okay, it is fascinating how quick people actually are able to move and make decisions and respond when it is actually something like this.
Don't you find it's true, though, that people are more quick to respond to something when they have an emotional reaction to it?
Oh, yeah.
People's hearts and souls are impacted by this. It's not just their heads. You know, in 07, 08, if I had $1 for every time I said to someone, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. They're like, yeah, whatever, you know, and they weren't listening to me. Like, yeah, she might be right, but it didn't have an impact. But when they were losing their home,
oh, yeah,
all of a sudden it resonated.
But I think the emotional component here this time around, because you could even argue that locally, I mean, this is a serious medical crisis.
Right.
And the big part of it making it so serious is the lack of support mechanisms in place that genuinely are doing twofolds, providing the necessary stuff like enough, masks for, first responders, right? I mean, that just blows my mind that in the modern world and in a country that's a first world country, that we are even dealing with that are people actually sewing to give masks to people. Secondly, is the fact that I don't have any way of trusting what information is valid and what information is not, right? So it's not necessarily that, like, because you ask people, most people don't have a personal connection with somebody they know, or 2 degrees of separation, at least in the people I've asked, that are aware of somebody who has it. Now, I personally happen to know somebody who lost their mother to this, but it wasn't in the United States. And all the emotionalities that goes with that. Like, you can't basically have a memorial service. If you have a memorial service, you can only have 10 people. They cannot be sitting next to each other in the church. So you can argue that the genuine medical fear versus the presumed fear, some people may argue is not really there. So
it's hard because you're right. So few of us have intimately touched.
Right. But the emotional reaction is still there.
Yeah.
And I don't have the street credentials or the academic credentials to even make heads and shoulders of that, but I'm going to be really interested to see what people basically attribute to that, because it wasn't people like, I mean, we're on the internet. Is it the fact that we are all connected and we're seeing all kind of imagery? Is it the fact that this is really a global situation, so we don't feel like we can run anywhere and somehow be in denial? Like, I can go to a small town in Alaska and avoid this because it's not Southern California based. I don't know.
I think it's a lot of things. I think it's all of those and the unknown. I mean, like, think back to the 80s when AIDS was coming on the scene.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Good example.
The sex, I'm not going to get this. And then, okay, well, I'm not having a blood transfusion, so I'm not going to get this. But we knew if I do that, this will happen. We don't have that now.
Well, but we do have is possibly, just like you mentioned, where I thought, if I had protected sex and it was kind of certain kind, then I'm basically at a high risk. And then, well, wait a minute, I can get it through a blood transfusion. Yeah. So I think we are going to be in for some more things that we are not aware of when it comes to this, that will clarify over time.
Yeah.
But again,
we're all unified by this global fear.
Yeah, I think it's a common thing. I've been saying this over and over for the last couple of weeks, is you have the ability 10 years, 5 years, 6 years, 2 months, whatever it is, to be anywhere on the planet and be able to initiate a conversation with somebody by saying, hey, how was it like for you during COVID 2020? And all of a sudden you have a common basis with that human being. I want to bring it back just to the industry of real estate and residential. So what we're looking at right now is a heightened awareness that people have about how their home, and we used to have to sell them hard on this, like to get them to think about it this way, but their home is their haven, it's their sanctuary in very meaningful, real ways that maybe before it was more of an esoteric, oh yes, it's my haven, it's my sanctuary. Now it is my safe place, literally, right?
Yeah.
So how long do you think that is going to take? Is it more of a permanent thing from your perspective, do you think, or is it something that's temporary?
More of a permanent thing, and that's my gut. My gut tells me it's more of a permanent thing. Just like after the 08-09 meltdown, we were all shocked to see that people no longer had the decades-old stigma about, oh, I'm a renter now. Because for decades, there was pride in owning your home. And after that whole financial debacle, there was not this stigma about being a renter anymore. And that still exists.
Well, you've spoken a lot about this, like it was a generational thing also, right? Like because if you think about millennials or people that are starting in their career path, they don't want to be saddled necessarily with a real estate holding, with land, with maintenance of backyard, all this stuff. They're a little bit more
that to be risky, whereas their parents believed it to be an investment in the future.
Well, and they have a little bit more of a nomadic lifestyle. What's going to be interesting for me, or at least they did. Because what's going to be interesting for me is to see this, because I mean, I'm looking at people, and I had a few of them yesterday on another interview that I did, where it was multi-generational under the same roof. So somebody who just, like my nephew, who just went from, is about to enter high school. So he's graduating, and he's old enough to remember this. Like this has been not just a sudden memory, but it's also been an extended memory that one way or the other, it is going to have an effect on how you make decisions.
Yeah, so deeply imprinted. Yeah,
deeply imprinted, and so it's going to be interesting also that this is no longer can be associated. Like going forward, we can't just say, oh well, millennials are nomadic. They don't have a sense of the need for a safe landing pad, a place where they can basically have a little bit more certainty. Same thing with people that are older. You can't basically say, well, it's a baby boomer. They're going to sell and scale down. Like that was already being challenged before. I think now it's even probably more so.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So anything else? What else have you seen? Like
I have seen, kind of to the prior point about the necessity for having a home office that really is a dedicated space that's going to get frequent use.
Yeah.
I have seen more demand for 5+ bedroom homes than I've seen in my career.
So that you have enough room for that, whether it's a single home office or
I don't know if you noticed, but like during the big run up, I mean, even until about 5 years ago, and all of the big luxury home builders that were building larger and larger luxury and super luxury homes, they were much larger square footage, but fewer bedrooms.
Oh yeah, no, I'll give you a perfect example. That's a personal example. My parents' house is about 7,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It's a 4-bedroom home.
Right.
Actually, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's see. Yeah, I'm correct. It's a 4-bedroom, and one of those bedrooms is a downstairs guest bedroom.
Right.
So yes, it was bigger. It was more open floor plan. It was that, but lesser rooms, right?
Right. And now I think that we're going to go back to more rooms, and that's a huge shift in the way we've built homes and the way we live in homes. So I'm curious to see if that stays the same. And I kind of think it will for a while.
I think the other thing to mention about this is before we were all about untethering, wireless, which again, that component of the smart home is going to be massive. Like that, you're no longer going to be able to just say, well, I contacted this company and they put this router in or whatever. You're going to have a brain in the home
and get ready. It's going to be nothing like we've expected. It's going to be times a million.
Right. You're going to need to do it because of the fact that you just experienced 5, 6, 7 people on the same bandwidth that you have in your home. Okay. Almost 24/7. Right. In fact, you from schooling or homeschooling, to, and I don't want to hear you go basically bury your head in your iPad to whatever. That's good. That electronic component is going to be
Oh, yeah.
unbelievably
Yeah.
expanded when it comes to home. But I think the other thing too is, like I said, we were all about, oh, I can take this and I can be anywhere and I can do whatever I'm doing, right? Now it's like, no, 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 no. I need to actually have a little separation. And especially if I'm telecommuting, when
Right.
I am in that room, I don't want, and I'm not picking on Harley, but like, I don't want the dog barking. I don't want, listen, there were videos where this lady was basically on a team meeting and her husband basically was walking behind her in his tidy whities, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And not even, she wasn't even aware of it, but everybody else was.
Well, and before your call, I was like, if one more neighbor starts blowing their leaves, I'm going to lose my mind. We're going to need to have soundproofed environments as well.
Well, back, like I said, backdrops,
Mhm.
all these elements that are going to basically go hand in hand that we used to maybe assign to a commercial or an office environment, that traditional office meeting,
And
now basically are going to go into the residential.
get this, I had a conversation yesterday with somebody. So ratcheting that up a notch is like, yes, we want our homes to be Wi-Fi solid, and have enough bandwidth for all the data that's going to happen. And we need to have dedicated spaces that are 10 steps above what they used to be. And because of the medical scare, if you will, and this global neuroses that I don't think is going to pass anytime soon,
Mm-hmm.
they're already talking about home technology, whereas each member comes through, the member of the family is tracked, and the house knows what their body temperature is, what their respiration is, what their physical activity levels are, and is tracking all this information. It's going to be crazy.
Well, I mean, today, if you have a Fitbit on, it will notify if somebody fell. I mean, there are the technology pieces are
Right.
there, but I don't think they were ever considered part of like the home safe home
Right.
or the smart home kind of
Now
idea.
that integration is going to happen.
You
Yeah.
know, two other things, by the way, Wendy, too, is I think because of the volatility of the environment, like I think there's a lot of people that right now are very polarized. There's a lot of division. There's really a sense, a tangible sense of fear
Mhm.
that you may actually encounter somebody that is whether it's basically because of a fear of economic downturn. There's 30 million applications for unemployment. I think it was 36 now. That there's a sense that if I have to maybe more fortify myself behind my home kind of thing, or that maybe people will come. I mean, the craziness is all on all levels. Maybe somebody's going to come drag me out of my house because I'm refusing to wear a face mask or whatever it is. There's probably going to be, realistically, there's probably going to be an increase of interest in safe rooms.
I would think so. I would think so. And not just safety from physical attack, safety from biological attack.
Yeah,
A good friend of mine who works for a company that
it's
does.
almost the modern day version of the bunker that that
Right,
you bury in the backyard.
right.
Yeah.
So wait for that to impact HVAC. A friend of mine who works with green home systems and green commercial building components said his phone is already ringing off the hook for people who are looking for upgrading their HVAC system so that they can control what's in the air that they're breathing at home, because they are in fear of that coming into their home.
So you should connect him with me, because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, seeing this coming, I basically contacted a company, and we are in the process of finalizing our arrangement to basically go in and do that. And this is where you increase the air purification situation, where it catches a lot of the stuff. It's not going to be enough. Like I started off saying, a lot of people are talking about like hygiene and cleaning, and we're like, well, wait a minute, what were you doing before?
Right.
You're not going to be able to get somebody to come into your business, whether it's an office or a retail or a restaurant, even more so. Poor guys from the hair salon and the nail salon. I mean, they're already getting like thrown under the bus as far as contamination. But you're not going to be able to get me to go into a place, or let's put it this way: you might be able to get me to go into a place, but if your competitor has a higher degree of air purification
Right.
that is quantifiable
Right.
and provable,
Right.
I am likely to maybe, hey, I like your food, but I'm going to take grandma out for food. I think we're going to go over here.
Absolutely.
So there's going to be a lot of stuff like that, whether it's water purifications, whether the concept of health and wellness, whether it is in your home or in your environment. I would not be surprised if you see some of this stuff in cars. I would not be surprised if I saw center consoles in cars that are basically UV sanitizing units.
Right. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't
where
doubt.
I can put my gloves, my mask, whatever it is, my keys can be sanitized and basically with UV lighting in there.
Yeah.
Um, it's an interesting thing because a lot of people that are looking at this also I think are seeing, regardless of industry, are seeing that this is a burden, this is a challenge, this is this is not how we live. Well, I don't know if you agree with me, but I don't think there's going back to the old normal. There's no
I
going
don't
back
think
to that.
there is. I think we have a new normal and we're not even sure what that is yet.
Well, but I think it presents opportunities, right? I mean, it does present opportunities.
I have to comment on what you said about given a choice of an environment to go into, whether you go into one that has the old way of handling the environment or a same business that has what you feel is a higher standard and a safer environment, you're going to choose the safer.
Yeah,
And
minimum compliance, and I've been preaching this with ADA compliancy for
right,
as long as I've been doing interior design. Minimum compliancy should always be considered as a starting point and not the end all. What
right,
happens is, unfortunately, that a lot of people look at these minimum compliancies and look at them only as challenges and burdens,
right.
rather than look at them as being, how can I turn this requirement that I have to fulfill by going a little extra? And if you can't figure it out, you should be calling somebody like me or Wendy. But
let me let me
basically,
let me just share this with
yeah,
you before we go down the other
yeah,
rabbit
yeah,
hole.
yeah.
And that is, people who are going to make those choices may not be who you think they are. And why I'm saying this is, yesterday I met with another builder that I know, and the first thing he said was, "Oh my gosh, are you okay being here? Because I know you have a heart condition. I
Hmm.
know you have an underlying health condition." I wasn't worried about the environment. He was worried about it for me.
Hmm.
So I think more and more we're going to see, especially business professionals like you and I, when we're arranging to have meetings with other people, we're going to be cognizant of what is helpful for them. And so the service provider needs to be aware of, it's not just the person you're advertising to necessarily that you think is going to come, it's other people who may be directing them to your environment or not.
Right, and somebody like that builder, if I may just piggyback on that, if somebody like that builder, if their sensitivity and awareness is to that point,
Mhm.
then that is going to also factor into the decisions that they make in their what they decide to construct and what they
It's
decide
not
to do.
surprising this is a very green and socially conscious builder,
Right,
obviously.
right, and but that in itself, my point was with where compliance, be it ADA, be it health, be it health department,
Mhm.
requirements.
Mhm.
People always look at this. They miss the boat.
Yeah,
In my opinion, they
yeah,
look at it as a burden to basically have to do in order to. So what do? We just meet minimum compliancy, and now I've checked that box, and I'm done.
right.
A couple of things happen. As much as possible, if you can predict by going a little extra that when those regulations, those minimum compliancies, 5 years and 6 years and 7 years down the road
Mhm.
change, and now
Mhm.
there's another added layer,
Right,
if you've already gone beyond that, you're probably already okay. So that means that you've saved the money of having to do that remodel in the future.
right.
That being said, even just pure marketing and business,
Mhm.
if you are able to meet the needs of more population, it means that more people are likely to walk through your door. So the question then lies in, how do I leverage the fact that I'm considered enough, hint, hint, wink, wink, manipulative maybe is the proper word, right? But basically, I'm a smart business person enough to go beyond the minimum compliancy so that I have a leverageable added competitive advantage
Mhm.
that I can actually now message to.
Well, we never see that in real estate. I mean, come on. How many real estate professionals do you know that go above and beyond the minimum standards? They're
No,
like,
no,
okay,
and again, in my industry too, it's like, well, we have to meet for ADA compliance. Oh, we have to meet with Title 24. Yes, but if you go that extra mile, your return on investment, just pure business, uh,
right.
moving that property faster. What you need, one buyer. All you need is one person to buy that property. If your property, it's like you and I have had the conversation about this relevant to aging in place. Nobody wants to talk about aging in place. Nobody wants to do modifications to their homes.
Mhm.
you know, um, Minimum what it needs so I can move it, right? Well, okay, but while you're in it, if you're getting older, you can actually benefit from this. Your asset can be improved. And here's the deal. If somebody has deep pockets and is moving in your desirable location and they're looking for a home that can accommodate them, their grandkids, maybe, or let's say their kids, and let's say somebody who's an older parent, all
Right,
under one roof where they can gather, they can entertain. Here we are now after this, we're going to entertain more in our homes. If that
right.
home already has that kitchen
Advantage.
counter at one level, like
Yeah.
you have in your home, for example,
Yeah.
if there is that guest bedroom downstairs, if there's zero entry threshold on the door, if those things, the width of the doors, circulation pathways, if those are already in, that one person with the deep pockets that's looking for that unique value property is going to snatch that thing up very quickly.
Yes.
You as a seller is going to benefit.
Yes. Yes. So
So anybody listening to us, basically, if you're interested in minimum compliancy, don't talk to us.
that's right.
Just,
We are not the people for you.
you're not the people for you. We're not a fit for everybody.
Oh
But
my word.
okay,
No.
so tell me right now, because we're like week 2 almost, like, or phase 2, I should say, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, phase 2, going into maybe phase 3.
Mhm.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing more traffic, more movement?
We're seeing a little bit more traffic, a little bit more movement. What's interesting is because I think there was so much pent up demand, because really in the middle of March, I mean, it dropped like a rock. It was like somebody took a hose and went and just cut off the water. Well, when we were allowed to go back to work and the hose was loosened, it all just came shooting out the other end. So I've been pretty busy since, for the last 5 weeks. So I don't know that it's going to ramp up per se, but I think it's going to stay at least this busy, because regular demand is going to rise to now this level, whereas it had fallen off completely. Because
Well,
people
and
are starting to see I have to live somewhere.
and if people are looking to do that, and even if it's those minimum things that they need to do in order to maybe enhance their property so that it's a little more appealing, now that they're able to maybe have people in their home to do that, whereas before they weren't comfortable to do that, that it's going to be, I don't think on in any sector other than maybe essentials. And when I mean essentials, I'm not talking about like podcasting, and I'm talking about medical. People that have been putting off medical visits and been doing telemedicine, right? And that's going to be an industry that changes now forever again because of this. Those are going to be things that are basically we're going to see a lot of movement on. But I think things that are discretionary are going to be a little bit of a slower transition.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. It's going to be very interesting to see. But and enough people, and this is a conversation I've had too. People are saying, "Oh my gosh, residential housing units aren't going to sell. The prices are going to crash." And I'm not sure. I do agree. There are going to be people who are furloughed and never brought back. I do believe there are people whose work is now going to be completely automated, and they have to reinvent themselves and find new work. And they may have to sell their homes and become renters. But there's still going to be a buyer for that home. It may be an investor who's buying it because there's going to be more renters. It's hard to say. I mean, we still have to look at how many bodies are here and how many housing units are here. So long as that dynamic doesn't change terribly much, I think we're going to see stability in pricing. But to your point, who's buying what is going to be radically different.
So with that being said, I think now that I've got a garbage truck collecting garbage in my neighborhood, and not a dog barking, but hey, that's my version of it. I think what I would like to do is just again point people to your website, veracityrealestate.com. It's it's realveracity.com is the website.
Realveracity.com, and
Veracity.
definitely go to the blogs, because that's where all my latest updates are going to be about COVID and the market and everything else.
Yeah, and you definitely want to check out Wendy's blogs. They're really great. They're very informative. If you haven't picked up on it, she's very, very personable. And so I thank you, my friend, for taking the time to spend with me today. It's always good to see you.
It's always good to see you. Be well.
You too. And thanks everybody for joining us. We will be back with another episode of the Raad Life very shortly. Take care, Wendy. Bye-bye.
Bye.